Hello and welcome back to This Is What Democracy Looks Like In, hosted by me, Mary Layton. This is the second half of my interview with Jackline and Jabs on politics in the Philippines. If you haven't heard the first half of this interview yet, go back to wherever you found this episode and look for Democracy in the Philippines Part 1. Or you can go to the website www.democracyinpodcast.com. You'll be able to find it there. So Jackline, you were also telling me before, because I was thinking about who else is involved in politics, right? And you were mentioning religion when we were discussing this earlier. So I wanted to jump in and say, tell me about the role of religion in politics. Just to send us in a different direction. Right?
I think it's not as crazy the past 2 election years compared to, let's say, previous one. That's just my go, Jacqueline.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, since kindergarten, I was in
Catholic school.
a Catholic school, and in a very progressive all-girls Catholic school ran by Benedictine sisters, and then they would send us out in the streets to do rallies.
To
push for certain causes.
Okay.
But they were also very
conservative.
No, they were gravitating towards the Aquinos. So we were very supportive of the Aquinos as an organization, or the Aquino.
What's
the
Aquinos?
rival of Marcoses?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Because
Yeah. Okay. Great.
I think they were very supportive of them, and so were other religious people, because for sure they want like a politician that would align to like the Catholic or Christian values. So for like the Verde and Marcoses, like obviously even in like a priest's homily or what is preached in the church, it would obviously be against these politicians, and they're even more vocal during like election time or like election season. But yeah, I would say primarily how church is affecting our government, or like the role of the church and state thing. I think we're not able to push for like reproductive health laws, like abortion, divorce, because there is really a campaign against those things. And I think our politicians are taking those into consideration, like highly, like they take the church's stand into consideration, because they don't want to be losing like the Catholic or Christian votes, which majority of the Filipinos are. And I would also just like to mention, what is Iglesia ni Cristo?
It's just it's a Christian religion. It's not Catholic.
But there's a lot of them.
Yeah,
a lot of members. I don't know how many. I don't know the percentage, but
I'm sorry. I want to say it's a cult, but yeah.
No,
say the name again.
It's like it's a Christian church in the Philippines. There's a lot of them. But what's interesting is they do block voting. So before election time, like politicians would approach or do meetings with their religious leader, like the head of the Iglesia ni Cristo, and they would try to sway them into endorsing them, because every single member of that church would have to vote for whoever is endorsed by their leader.
Interesting. Yeah. So is there official religion in the Philippines?
I think officially no, but like
right.
80,
but the majority is
Catholic.
It's Catholic. And are there any official things in the Constitution saying that there is a separation with church and state, like in the United States, or there isn't? I don't know. Yeah, but there is effectively
that's what
working.
That's what I want.
Do what
that's
the
what
church
I want to
says.
add. In terms of church wanting to to insert their thoughts with the politics involved, I think it's just mostly like abortion, reproductive stuff, and divorce. Basically, those are the ones that they just want to get into. So they have influence. Definitely, they have influences. But like the actual laws, it's not like it's such a. They don't really like sway to. That makes sense.
And how do people feel about that? So is it considered controversial that religion is considered part of
well, the good
the
side
law?
is, I think, for example, religious events, or even just religious, for example, like
Holy Week, the Holy Week.
Yeah, they're part of like what we call federal
Easter's,
holidays here.
like Easter Sunday, the 3
they're
days
they're
before.
official holidays. And then
Yeah.
what else? Oh, I think what I forgot to mention about the revolution that overthrew Marcos, the church was highly involved in that. Like the nuns, the priests were out in the streets.
Yeah, it was the priest that called out the people that like, let's start rally.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the church was actually involved. Really directly, as
like
in
I've said, the
part of the
actual
revolution.
laws, they don't really. It's kind of weird, right? I can't explain it. They're involved, but not in the actual laws, unless it's divorce and abortion stuff.
So I think maybe what you're describing is they're part of society rather than separate from and judging things as part of the law.
And then
interesting.
It's just like, if I want to go like continuing to the Marcos Jr., the fascinating thing about him is Duterte was like let's say corrupt, and he was so corrupt. And then Marcos Jr., I would expect him to be corrupt and like probably a more negative person. What happened is, for now, it's like it's his second year or third year in presidency. It was just more. It's more like right now clearing up just his dad's name, their legacy, rewriting. That's about basically as bad as it gets. It hasn't gotten worse.
But he's a lesser evil.
Yeah, just a lesser evil than the previous one.
But something we forgot to mention to Mary was a really huge problem that, aside from corruption, that Duterte created. That's even like a matter of national security.
Yes, this one's crazy.
He basically seems to have been selling us off to China. Like, for example, under the arbitrary laws, like certain parts of the West Philippine Sea.
At the start, it's just the fishing industry.
They're officially declared as ours. Like, imagine it's just like less than an hour off the Philippine shore, and then China would say that is ours.
So yeah, it started there. China, just from the news that I know, they started with like.
No, and wait, I'm in the Philippines. So when I was working in a place called when I was working in Manila during the time of Duterte, suddenly, Mary, like there were so many, not just many. Like, I don't know how to be explaining how much Chinese people were going to our country, that they were establishing. Like, imagine when you're in a city where there are more Chinese people, or like you're in a place where there are more Chinese people than Filipino people. And then I think the way that they would arrive in the Philippines is somehow illegal, and they would establish what we call as pogos, which are like offshore gaming.
This is one of those things that I said earlier, that like they make up Department of Health, and then there is this one pogo, which is offshore gaming. Which is gambling, like which is a valid government agency, but then it got infiltrated with. We still don't know the story because it's currently happening right now. Like in the span of like 6 months right now, all the news is about the Chinese being able to be in that department.
Okay, here's the thing. There's like this so very hot pressing issue right now in the Philippines, wherein like a mayor from a city in the north turns out to be like a full-blooded Chinese person who was never born here, but she's got like a fake birth certificate.
Oh, weird. So that kind of level of
he's
corruption.
Chinese. So she seems to have infiltrated the country.
So I'm always interested in, when we talk about corruption, what kind of corruption we're talking about. So it sounds like in the past it was the kind of corruption of, we're going to steal all the money and we're going to buy handbags with it, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like blunt, like we're stealing the money and we're not going to build anything for the country, and we're going to shoot our enemies. And this sounds more like a kind of less, almost like less obvious corruption. It's more like we're selling resources. We're doing things to the country that don't appear quite so obvious, but we're changing relationships in a sort of geopolitical way that no one quite understands. we're still selling off, we're still creating political jobs for people out of nowhere, but it's not quite as obvious as just siphoning off all the money into a bank account.
Yeah.
But right now,
no, because I mean, I'm so in.
But I also want to say, so one thing I always find really interesting in these conversations is when there's corruption, and I've talked with many different countries where there is a very high level of corruption. So Mexico and Italy, for example. What is often the thing that causes people to despair is the fact that things don't get done in their daily life. Now, the organizations at the very local level, the reason I'm so interested in them is if there is this level of corruption at the national level, do people still feel that daily life works? Are you still able to actually get things done? Like, if you're going through your daily life, is the level of dysfunction such that people feel hopeless? Or is it enough that, like, can you carry on doing business? Can you carry on getting stuff done? Do houses stand up? Like, do
there's
trains run? Kind of
different
stuff.
levels of corruption, right? We gotta break it down, and which is I'm always interested in, like, what's the actual, people just say corruption and then it's just like,
right,
oh, what
exactly.
is it? I have concrete examples of what it is, from small scale to big scale, right? So if I just give you a quick example of corruption in the small scale, let's say that the one in our street, the barangay, this chairman, the head of that town needs to do this. He just knows someone. He has budget, and he just wants to do a task for this guy. Oh, just give him $2 and he's gonna do it.
Yeah.
And then it's off the books, right?
Right.
That's a small corruption. And then it's like, it's just $2. So you're kind of like, it's not a corruption.
Right.
You're just giving $2 to somebody. And then we go to like the middle scale. Let's say,
I guess something that affects your life.
But it's like every day now. It's like there's a auditor. There's an auditor. He's a government official. He's gonna go to a pharmacy or something. Like, did you do your job? Did you do your job?
Yeah.
And then I'm in this private company, and I have an auditor. I'm gonna give him now $200 now, higher, because he's a give. Sometimes it's just even food. Just give them food. That's a form of corruption. Yeah. And then if you're asking if individuals are still living, that's how they live. The smaller people just take like $2 to $10 amount, and then they live.
I have a lot to say about this, because somehow
please go ahead.
I'm coming from a family of politicians. Like, two of my grandfathers were mayors and that, and like my uncles presently. I would say the Philippines had been so desensitized about corruption that it's normal for us already. People just want to see something. Like, for example, I don't care if you corrupt some money from building that bridge, because we know it's going to happen anyway. So just build that bridge. So that's how a lot of Filipino people would feel. And I'm not saying, well, okay, I would say I asked a lot of my family members about corruption since they were public officials.
They're blinded.
I'm telling them, I hope you're not corrupting, but I know that you are. And they told me that even if you come into politics wanting to be righteous and not wanting to corrupt, you're not gonna stay. Like, they're gonna get you out. So somehow people, like, for example, you run for councilor, the mayor will be forcing you to accept the dirty money. Otherwise, if you don't cooperate, they'll do everything to get you out of your position.
Yeah.
And then corruption on a large scale. Well, I lived in Manila. I worked in Manila. And Manila is very small. Like, it's gotten to a point wherein it's normal for an employee to be taking 4 to 6 hours of your day just trying to get, like, just with the public transportation. because like lining up for to get into the train, it's kilometers long, and when you get there, I don't know if you've seen those videos wherein people will try to stuff themselves in the train, and I've experienced that. Like even like an inch of my head, I couldn't move, kind of thing. I think Marcus, just putting it back to Marcus, I think Marcus won, and somehow people have been looking past what like Ferdinand Marcus did. It's because they see something tangible. Like for example, they would always say, oh, this train that we ride into now, or like benefit, this was like a Marcus project. Yep.
It didn't used to be like this.
Like imagine Mary, like we barely have new trains. Like we still ride into the same train that
is the weird part. That is the
built
weirdest one.
like how many years ago?
Yeah, that is the weird one, wherein they have a really good propaganda to say that Marcus is actually good because he actually built them, and then there's no new ones.
Yeah,
there are no new structures to say that like, oh, this president built this, which is weird.
Exactly. Yeah, I guess it's the equivalent of like, well, I'm thinking back to the little small bribes, right? The little small bribes, it's a difference between you have to pay a bribe, say, to have a bridge be built, and then you pay. Well, let me phrase it this way: you pay off the inspector to not inspect the bridge, and then when there's an earthquake, the bridge falls down. Versus you pay off the people bringing the building equipment, but the bridge still stays up, right? In some countries, the problem is that you're paying bribes and then everything falls down and no one can trust everything and everything's dangerous. In other places, you're paying small bribes, but things still stay up when an earthquake happens.
That makes actual problem.
Right. And it's kind of like for thinking about when people think about having to pay small bribes, like it's an extra fee, right? Is it something that's resented and seen as leading to bad results?
Now that you've mentioned it, is it just... it makes sense because the politicians, a mayor or a lesser officer than him, they just want to make a project. They just want to do the bare minimum, and they say they did something, and then when they do, that's like a check mark, right? Like do this, and then they're all bare minimum.
Yeah.
Now we could say that we did something. All the money you placed such a small amount of money to do the project, and then you keep the rest.
Yeah. Okay, so I do want to very quickly, because I do it, we're really nearly out of time, but because I do it in every episode, I want to just talk about the voting process. So very quickly, let's go through. How do you vote in the Philippines?
Yeah.
Do you vote every, like, is it compulsory voting?
You could choose not to vote. If you want to, you would have to get yourself registered. I think it's only the past 3 elections that it's automated. Before it was a whole it was manual. And then you would shade like a ballot, and then it's done per like the tallying.
The barangay does that.
The tally is...
Hang on, when you say manual versus automated,
really
what do you mean?
Before 2010,
you would write who you would want to vote for.
You circle it, like shade it, and then they will count it manually.
Oh, so it's paper vote versus electronic voting, you mean?
Electronic voting, you still somehow, those
markers,
those exams that we have that you shade, and then it's put into a that machine.
Yeah, Pico's machine. Yeah. Oh, that was also like corrupted.
Yeah, but anyway, before it was manual.
Oh, okay. Wait. Go back. So hang on. You're getting ahead of me because, like, okay, still in the UK we still have a piece of paper you put a cross in. So you're jumping right ahead. So you used to have
before 2010,
a piece of paper before 2010. And you would fill in a bubble sheet. That's what it's called, right? And you would put that into a machine.
Just a normal box. Just a normal box to compile it. Just a normal box.
That level of manual.
And then And remember those barangays or the town, like neighborhood watch people? They basically they're the ones who count it.
No.
Oh,
you
no,
know
no.
who counts it? It's the public school teachers.
Oh, yeah. Volunteers, basically.
Oh,
yeah.
Volunteers.
Interesting.
And they do that in the public schools.
They do it in the schools, and it's the school teachers who
Yep,
volunteer.
yeah, that makes, I remember.
And then voting closes at
like 6 p.m. or something.
And then they have a ballot filled with papers, like a little box filled with paper.
Mm-hmm.
And then
then they
politicians would have these so-called watchers who would just watch the counting process because it's very manual, Mary. They would open up the boxes, the ballots, and then one person would be reading on it, like, for example, Mary, and then there's like a whole tally in the board. So it's that level. It's really
but that's the level it is in most countries. That's the thing. So that's what it, and it, so could anyone volunteer to count it?
I think primarily it's the teachers, and then they would they would open it to most oh no, actually it's really the teachers who take the primary role, but the church also has so-called like volunteer auditors.
I also think every, like, your party, I think there's supposed to be a representative to know that no one cheats on it, right? Like, there's something that concept, like you have one representative for both or any big ones.
Yeah. So that it used to be like bubble sheets counted by teachers in the public schools, observed by members of the party. So what is it now?
Same place,
electronic?
like same setting, like the watchers, and then, but you don't count it manually. There's a machine that you insert it in, you feed it in.
You'd have electronic voting, right? So which do you feel is more secure? From the sound of it, you don't think much of the hand counting.
I was very happy when things were automated.
Interesting.
Because when they started saying that it was electronic, of course the first thing that was thinking was it was going to be cheating.
Electronic.
Yeah, at the electronic level. I that's what my thought was. But then like for me, the good guy won. So I was like thinking, okay, maybe they're not gonna cheat. And then
interesting. So when you assumed it would be cheating electronically, but then when the person who wasn't the bad guy won, you assumed, oh, maybe it is trustworthy. But Jacqueline, you had the other perspective.
I guess I trust technology, and also I wanted it to be automated because in the Philippines there's still a lot of election-related violence. So I guess they would really
like what kind of thing?
Those teachers, especially in parts of Mindanao, or rural parts of the country, where they would really like go to the location, threaten those teachers,
like a mafia kind of, like, be intimidating kind of level.
So for me, like making that electronic, it somehow puts the load off those teachers and makes it safer. And
I feel like it's a different every place in the, like, it's really because I wasn't there to vote. I just know
you never voted in the Philippines.
I could vote, but I never voted because the nominees, like the ones who are elected, are like, I just didn't like any of them.
So you've never actually voted?
I should have voted the last one. Because I'm here, but I could have gone to the embassy, but I just didn't realize the process. I should have voted.
Yeah. So in the past, there has been intimidation of election workers. Do you know what happens to the ballots after they've been counted? Either electronic or paper.
The electronic ones? Or so there's an auditing process, PPCRB.
There's two I think there are two different bodies that,
here. There's like an auditing group, which is, by the way, a Catholic, or it's from church volunteers, or what's called the
Interesting.
Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting. So they do the auditing of the ballots.
But I feel like there's also another one. I feel like I feel like there's another party. I'm just guessing here. I think there are two parties.
Yeah,
and then the other one is like
what, the Commission on Elections?
Yeah, I think so.
No, but the Commission on Elections, they're really like the branch of, they're really the government agency taking care of the whole election process. So they're not like an external auditing.
I thought they were like considered the external already. Then I guess
Yeah, it's the church that is somehow auditing or safeguarding the electoral process.
So the church is really considered quite a trustworthy organization within
this
whole process.
Trust the church in that regard. I would.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if they find discrepancy, the ones who are sitting anyway, it's not like they're gonna say, "Oh, we don't believe the church," or at least, "Oh, we're gonna believe the church, and then we're gonna change the ruling." It doesn't even work. The church will just say that like that what they found out, that's like, "Oh, that's wrong," but nothing happened.
Yeah, yeah. So, would you say how much would you say people actually trust the process?
I would say I did.
I still trust it.
I don't trust it anymore, and here's why.
Okay, yeah, the last one, right?
I know I was hoping for the other candidate to win last election for president, but I would say I really didn't trust it because I couldn't forget this moment wherein this was, I just finished voting. It was, and then here's the usual scenario in the Philippines during election day. So you would vote, but a lot of people are out on the streets, like, talking to other people, seeing how things are going. And then our church has this huge projector or boards with the figures projected in it. And then I couldn't forget how my barangay hasn't even closed the voting polls yet. So we could still vote.
Yeah.
And then suddenly in the national news, it stated that like
there's already a winner.
Yeah, like 98% of the votes are in, and obviously Marcos already won. So I'm like, how is that possible? Like, a lot of people are still voting. How do we have these figures so fast? I mean, we're not even like a first world country. Like, our internet is very slow. Even in the US, like, election takes a couple of days. And how is there a result already?
She was just a quick story. Like, she was still in the Philippines that time. I was already here.
Yeah.
And I was kind of confident that our guy, or she's a girl, our person is gonna win. So I kind of slept it off. I slept.
Yeah.
And she woke. No, I mean, she was one of the first few messages, and then she was like really sad, like, because I was like, I woke up, I'm like, oh wow, she really lost. And then it was like a landslide loss. I mean, I expected if she lost, it was like 60% to the other guy, 40%. It was like a 90-10, which did not make sense.
But so how usually how quickly do they announce the result? I mean, if it's paper ballots, presumably it takes a while to count them.
Maybe you're gonna see like a good definite.
No, from the past national elections, if it's a national, meaning like senators, president, it takes more than a week, even like a week. Clearly a week.
But the next day you could kind of see the percentage. It's like if this guy is winning, like, she gets 70% of the votes, and then the other guys.
Yeah, but it slowly comes.
It's
not
slowly,
like instantly 98% of the votes are in.
Yeah, like what I've said. That's why I kind of slept off of it too. Like I was like, if I woke up, it's not yet over anyway. So, and then but
Jackline, you were seeing it even as the voting hadn't ended yet. And the polls were still open.
Let's say you could vote at 9 a.m. It ended at like 3 p.m. That quick, which is very unusual.
Yeah. So, do you think that was just because it was electronic voting this time, and therefore they were getting the results faster, or do you think does it feel like it was suspicious?
In this before, because I was really crying. I didn't want Marcus to win.
I was invested too.
From what I remember, there was this whole controversy of the Marcos family meeting, like what do you call that? The supplier of the company that supplies the machines. Yeah.
That's when it becomes fishy at all, because of the actual machines are also like China made, which is the previous president. Because the Duterte was the president, and then her daughter, his daughter is the vice president now. So they're making a dynasty.
Yeah.
She wants to be a president the
sure.
next election, probably. I don't know what happens.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So one of the final questions I always like to ask is, what does democracy mean to you?
Define democracy.
And do you think
I don't know the actual definition of democracy for like.
Well, it's not the actual definition. What does it mean
I don't
to
even know
you?
the definition of it to begin with. You know, in my head, it's just like freedom to do,
Freedom.
like not having a dictator. I guess, like, you know, when you have a picture of, like, they say China's a communist country, as long as it's not on those types of level, I think it's still democracy.
So what does it mean to you, and how do you perceive it?
I think that's about just a short answer I have. I don't like too much. I guess like it's not as complicated to me as I want it to be.
Yeah. What about you, Jacqueline? What does it mean to you? And
Well,
do you
from my
think you live in a
experiences in the
democracy?
Philippines, I would like to believe we were living in democracy, but reflecting about it now, I think we were, but on a very surface level. Like, okay, this is a democracy. But in a sense, we're not, because we're stuck in the same system, same political dynasties, and in a way, we're stuck in our lives. Like, when I look back in the Philippines, I already come from a very privileged background back there, but somehow you're stuck in a system we're in. For example, like,
you can't,
like
you've worked for 6 years and you still can't see yourself buying a house.
yeah,
right?
like the living wages. I mean, I know that each person here has, I mean, each country has their economic problems too, but in the Philippines, a lot of things are very unattainable. Like, even like going to a grocery is quite tough. And I was making like what a lot of Filipinos feel is a really high salary, but I could.
She would say that I believe it, like she relatively would probably have a high salary compared to other 20-plus-year-olds there, but you don't still see buying a car. You still don't see buying a house compared here in America, right? Like you could work 3 years if you're not loans or anything. You could probably buy a house or something.
And the only option left for so many Filipinos to be out of that cycle of poverty is to go abroad, to live, to be away from their families. Which, when I think about it, is that real freedom? Is that
democracy?
Right. Does that really feel like freedom? Yeah. Well, thank you guys both so much. This has been really interesting and so much fun. I appreciate it a great deal. I hope you enjoyed it too. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can subscribe, share, or even support us by going to the website www.democracyinpodcast.com. There you can find more information about the topics discussed today, as well as updates on what is coming next.